Today. I have not, I think I want to keep my remarks fairly short because I do want to hear some of the fantastic presentations. I know people have put a lot of time and energy in, and I want to hear what people have to say. But I'll just kick off with a couple of ideas of where we are right now. I mean, you know, in a few days, Remembrance Day is coming. And I know that after Ian's presentation last night, and some of the remarks of some of the other people about how Remembrance Day seems to be changing for folks. That the memorials seem to be more militarized, the speeches that we hear from government officials and others really makes you wonder, you know, we are commemorating Remembrance Day, but, you know, are we adulating war or are we lamenting it? You know, what is it that, what is the takeaway message out of Remembrance Day? And I've often felt and hoped that Remembrance Day, you know, should be a day for us, should be a day for people to think about peace. That seems to me to be the obvious takeaway message of that. But increasingly, this government has been using these moments, these symbols, recast them in a way that appeals to their own political base, politicizing them, if you will, in order to galvanize their own base of voters that seem to be much more interested in dealing with Remembrance Day as a commemoration of Canada's military history and victories, as opposed to the great tragedy that these wars have been. So on last few years on ceasefire, we just, one year I think it was 2 years ago, we put out the question to our folks. We said, you know, is Remembrance Day too much about war and not enough about peace? And the response was amazing. We couldn't believe the comments that were left on our blog, hundreds and hundreds of them, in a way that, you know, far surpassed the kind of discussion that we were getting on other issues, whether it was Afghanistan or other things. It really seemed to strike a chord. And so for the last few years, we've slowly expanded, trying to reclaim Remembrance Day as a time to remember for peace. And I'll give you a little insider stuff. We met with our pollster yesterday, and we got some initial numbers back that we're going to release a little bit later next week. Now, we don't have a lot of money for polling, but we did manage to get a couple of questions in. And it was a poll just looking at 18 to 30-year-olds, the so-called millennial generation, asking them about Remembrance Day and what it means to them. And one of the questions we asked them was, you know, what does Remembrance Day mean to you? You know, is it a day to remember those soldiers who died in war? Is it a day to commemorate Canada's military history? Or is it a day to remember peace? And I'm not sure if you're surprised by these results, but of course overwhelmingly the number one response, in terms of ordering those in priority, the number one response was recognizing those people who died in those wars. And I think it was like 71% or something like that. So I think that that's kind of a given. We expected that. But we were interested in what was the second thing to think of. So we all agree we're commemorating the deaths of people. Well, what is the next thing that people are thinking of? And 3 to 1 people chose remembering peace over the military history. 3 to 1. So a huge number of people there think like we do about Remembrance Day, I would say. But a little more sobering was asking young people whether they were going to commemorate Remembrance Day in some way. And it was roughly 50-50. Half said they were, half said they weren't. So we looked at each other across the table and said, well, what is this? Is that a good thing? You know, is it half full, half empty? And a lot of we have a lot of staff, a lot of 20-somethings. There actually are millennials. Many of our staff and interns were there. They said, no, that's appalling. That should be much higher. 50% is not good enough. More people should be commemorating it. So I think if you put those two things together, if we can make Remembrance Day more about peace, in addition to commemorating those who died, then we can reconnect with that young generation that's coming up. And so one small thing we did is we did these stickers for people to wear along with their poppy. You can put it along with your red poppy or your white poppy or whatever you want to wear. And it's just a little lapel that says, November 11th, I remember for peace. And so we just put 1,000 of those in the mail on Friday to all our supporters across Canada. So, so I'm really honored to be with you here today. The great work that Kais and Rob and Saul and Bill and all of the other folks that have been doing on this issue is just really moving. You know, I've been involved in the peace movement since '92. I count myself as kind of the first of the post-Cold War generation of peace activists. My first big peace marches were against Gulf War I. That's when I was around. I've learned that, you know, there's kind of two parts to our family. There's the anti-war part, and there's the kind of pro-peace part. I think you know what I mean. There's the anti-war people who are there. We share values, we share views of things, but they are there when Canada seems occasionally, as it does, or the world veers on the course to war, and we can count on those people to sort of come out and swell the ranks of the demonstrations and whatnot, just like we saw that fantastic January of 2003 when we all came out to oppose Canada's involvement in the war in Iraq, which was amazing. And then they go off and do other things. But then there's the pro-peace folks, those people that are there all the time, that are constantly working forward. And I would say that the militancy of the anti-war part is only matched by the persistency of the pro-peace side of the family. And that's equally important. And I think that's what's so exciting about the Department of Peace Initiative, is that we're looking at not just an anti-war, but a structural change, a fundamental structural change about way of things. So we can deal with those three key issues that I think Paul put out there, which was peacekeeping, women in peace building and protecting women in areas of conflict, and nuclear disarmament, which I think are three essential key issues. But you know, as others have said, where does this connect? You know, so I brought my copy of Hill Times today. Okay, this is the newspaper that's, you know, goes around the hill, and it's, you know, it's world famous within about 100 feet of. After that, it's, you know, it gets pretty rough. But you know, I was just looking at here, and they had the list of all the communications connections of all the various departments that exist, and the list is enormous. I mean, there's a lot of departments in this federal government. Let me just share some. You know, you've got Health and Northern Development, Public Works, Fisheries and Oceans, Foreign Affairs, Veterans Affairs, Treasury, Aboriginal Affairs, International Cooperation, International Trade, Human Resources, Finance, Immigration, Environment, Transport, Defense, Heritage, Justice, Natural Resources. There's all kinds of them. Labor, Agriculture, National Revenue, Public Safety, and the list goes on and on and on. But what's missing? Where's the Department of Peace? It's not there. There seems to be lots of room. They got a lot of towers. There's lots of offices in Ottawa. It's not hard up for that. And they all spend a lot of money. You know, you think they could get a little bit for peace. I think we have to get back to first principles. Is what is a government all about? But it is about ensuring peace, right? Isn't it peace, order, and good government? It's the first one. Peace is the first one. And if anyone ever says to you that peace doesn't belong in Parliament, just point them to that picture that's on the back there, right? See that big thing sticking up there? They don't call it the War Tower. It's the Peace Tower. Where's our Department of Peace? We want it now.